I was the overnight stalker at Cold Storage 7, a windowless, single-story freezer warehouse on the edge of the industrial park. The building was a concrete slab the color of old ash, roof bristling with rusted vents that hissed all night like dying breaths. They kept the floor at minus 18 degrees Celsius and the lights on motion sensors, so every aisle felt like a morgue that only woke when you stepped inside it. I'd worked there 9 months, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., alone, because the pay was double what any 24-year-old with a useless English degree could hope for. Tonight the rain had been falling since dusk, a steady, monotonous drumming that turned the metal siding into a snare drum. At 11:42 p.m., the delivery arrived. I heard the truck's air brake sigh outside the loading bay, then the hydraulic whine of the roller door. A lone driver backed the 18-wheeler in, headlights carving tunnels through the downpour. He didn't get out. Instead, the cab door opened just wide enough for a clipboard to slide out and clatter to the wet concrete. No name, no logo on the truck, only a faded hazard sticker peeling at the edges. I chalked it up to corporate subcontracting and hit the base switch. The roller rattled up, revealing a trailer lit by a single swinging bulb. Inside were 6 shrink-wrapped pallets, tagged, "Keep frozen, urgent." The labels listed the destination as Cold Storage 7, but the product code read, "Undisclosed biological." I hesitated. We usually handled frozen pizzas and bulk vegetables. The driver revved the engine once, a low warning growl, so I rolled the pallets off with the pallet jack. They were heavier than anything I'd moved before, the plastic wrap fogged with frost so thick it looked like breath on glass. When the last pallet cleared the trailer, the truck pulled away without a word, taillights swallowed by rain and fog. I checked the manifest on the clipboard. Delivery 1 of 6 to 12 pallets remaining ETA unknown. No sender address. Just a timestamp 2:47 a.m. I left the pallets in the receiving zone and went back to sweeping aisles. The motion sensors kept flicking on one after another, following me like eyes. At 1:17 a.m., the overhead PA crackled, temperature spike detected in Zone C. Zone C was the deepest aisle, furthest from the loading bay, where we kept overflow stock. I grabbed the handheld scanner and walked the length of the warehouse. The closer I got, the warmer the air felt, still cold enough to hurt, but not the brutal bite I was used to. The scanner beeped red. Zone C's digital thermometer read minus 3 degrees Celsius and climbing. I rounded the corner and stopped. One of the new pallets sat square in the center of the aisle, plastic wrap sliced open from the inside, edges curled and bloody. Whatever had been inside was gone. A trail of wet footprints led from the pallet to the emergency exit. Bare feet, 5 toes clearly defined, each print evaporating before the next, as if the heat of the skin melted the frost. I followed them anyway, heart punching my ribs. The exit door was shut, alarm armed. No sign of forced entry. Yet the prints ended right at the threshold. I checked the camera feed on the monitor at the end of the aisle. The timestamp showed 1:03 a.m., footage of me entering Zone C, flashlight bobbing. But the pallet behind me was still sealed. The wrap only tore between 1:03 and 1:17, during the 14 seconds I had my back turned. The camera had captured nothing else. No shadow, no movement, only frost swirling in slow motion like smoke. I radioed security at the main office. No answer. I tried my phone, no signal, as usual this deep inside the building. Then the scanner chirped again. Delivery 2 of 6 truck approaching. I jogged to the bay, boots slipping on condensation. The same truck idled outside, headlights off this time. The driver's silhouette sat motionless behind the wheel. I hit the roller switch. The door rose to reveal the trailer empty except for a single pallet, same label, same frost. But the plastic was already torn, contents missing. I looked at the driver's cab. The window was fogged, but I could make out a face pressed against the glass, pale, mouth open in a silent scream, eyes wide and filmed with ice. The engine revved once, then the truck lurched backward, disappearing into the storm. I slammed the bay door and locked it from the inside. At 2:47 a.m., The PA spoke again, voice distorted by static. Final delivery, cold storage 7, accept all pallets. The roller door rattled up by itself. Truck headlights flooded the bay. 6 trucks now, lined up nose to tail, engines idling like growling beasts. Each trailer door yawned open, revealing identical torn pallets, frost steaming into the night. I backed away until I hit the wall. The footprints returned, fresh this time, leading from every aisle toward me, converging on the spot where I stood. The temperature gauge on the wall ticked up. -3 degrees Celsius, 0 degrees Celsius, 4 degrees Celsius. The motion sensors blinked red, overloaded. Then silence. The trucks vanished, engines cutting off mid-rev, headlights dying. Only the rain remained, hammering the roof like applause. I stood alone in the bay, surrounded by 6 empty pallets and a floor slick with melting ice. The clipboard lay at my feet. A new line had been added beneath the manifest, written in frost that melted as I read it. Delivery complete. Recipient, you. I clocked out at 6 a.m. sharp. The morning shift found the warehouse at -18 degrees Celsius again, pallets gone, floor dry. Security footage showed nothing after 2:47 a.m., only static and the faint outline of footprints that ended at the exact spot where I stood. I handed in my badge the next day. The supervisor said turnover was high at cold storage 7. He didn't ask why. Some nights, when the rain is heavy and the industrial park is dark, I swear I still hear the roller door rattling on its own. And once, just once, I found a single wet footprint on my apartment carpet, bare, 5 toes, already evaporating in the warm air. I used to pull night security at St. Elora General, the old East Wing, to be exact. The hospital shut down in 1998 after the state cut funding, but the county kept one floor lit so the morgue could serve overflow from the city. My shift ran 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Just me, 2 orderlies, and the corpses nobody claimed. The rest of the building was dark, windows boarded, ivy strangling brick. Rain that October sounded different against the cracked panes, like knuckles tapping glass, asking to be let in. At 11:27 p.m., my radio hissed. Dispatcher's voice slurred through static. Check terminal ward, motion sensor tripped. Terminal ward was the old pediatric ICU, sealed since the fire 25 years ago. I'd never been sent there. I asked for clarification. The line went dead. Protocol said ignore prank calls, but the siren in my gut told me to walk. The East Wing corridor stretched longer than I remembered, fluorescents flickering like dying fireflies. Every footstep echoed twice, once off tile, once off something softer, like flesh. I passed the nurse's station, charts still clipped to the counter, dates frozen in 1998. One chart lay open, patient 417 discharge, pending. Below it, a new line scrawled in fresh blue ink, 11:27 p.m., escort requested. Terminal ward's double doors were chained, padlock rusted orange. The chain hung loose, links snapped. I pushed. Doors groaned open on a blast of air that smelled of antiseptic and wet ash. Inside, the ward was intact, beds made with faded Mickey Mouse sheets, stuffed animals slumped on pillows. But the walls were blackened, wallpaper peeling in charred curls. Rainwater dripped from the ceiling, pooling beneath the central bed. A child's gown lay spread on the mattress, monogram A-Ray, perfectly dry. My flashlight flickered. The overhead PA crackled. Code blue, terminal ward. The voice was mine, recorded months earlier during a drill. I backed up. Behind me, the doors slammed shut. The chain rattled, rethreaded itself, clicked. I pulled, no give. The air temperature dropped so fast my breath crystallized. From the far end of the ward came a soft whimper, then a giggle, then silence. I raised my flashlight. A small figure stood beside the last bed, barefoot, hospital gown cinched at the hem, head tilted at an impossible angle. I recognized the face. Alice Ray, age 7, victim of the 1998 fire. Her file photo had hung in the break room for years. She raised one hand, index finger pressed to her lips. Across the ward, every bed's call light blinked red, then white, then red again in perfect unison. The PA repeated my own voice. Terminal ward secure. Do not resuscitate. I ran to the nearest window. The glass was painted black from the inside, but rain hammered the other side like fists. Behind me, the drip, drip, drip quickened. I turned. Water now poured from the ceiling in steady streams, pooling higher, ankle deep, icy. Alice stepped into the puddle. Ripples spread outward, but she left no footprints. She opened her mouth. A voice came out, not hers, not mine. They forgot to take me home. The water rose to my shins. The bedsheets lifted, floating like lily pads. Stuffed animals turned their heads toward me, button eyes wet with melted plastic. I waded forward, boots sloshing. Alice pointed to the central bed. Beneath the gown lay a small cassette recorder, the kind nurses use for shift notes. I pressed play. My own voice crackled. Night shift log, October 14th. One unclaimed minor. Transfer to city morgue, denied. Storage, terminal ward. The recording ended with a click, then rewound itself, tape squealing. I dropped the recorder. It sank beneath the water, still playing my voice on endless loop. The ward lights died. Only the exit sign glowed green, but it pointed not to the door I'd entered, but to a maintenance hatch in the floor. Water lapped at my knees. Alice smiled, a small, patient smile. The hatch handle turned from the inside. I backed away, slipped, went under. The water tasted of smoke and copper. Hands, small, cold, mini, pressed against my chest, guiding me down. I surfaced gasping, clutching the hatch edge. Below was a service shaft lit by red emergency bulbs. A gurney waited, straps undone, chart clipped to the rail. Name: Security Officer, Night Shift, October 14th. Time of death: pending. I kicked free, scrambled back into the ward. The water was gone. The beds were empty, sheets crisp, dry. Alice stood by the door, now unchained. She raised her hand again, this time waving goodbye. I bolted. The corridor was its normal length. The nurse's station dark, charts undisturbed. I reached the security office at 11:59 p.m. My watch read 11:28. The radio crackled once more. Dispatcher's voice, calm and distant. Terminal ward motion sensor reset. All clear. I never logged the call. At dawn, the day shift found me asleep at the desk, boots soaked, hair dripping. They joked about my shower. I handed them the keys and walked out. Later, I checked the county records. St. Alora's East Wing had no terminal ward on any blueprint. The fire in 1998 had gutted the pediatric ICU entirely. No patient named Alice Ray was ever admitted. But every October 14th, the motion sensor in a non-existent ward trips at 11:27 p.m. Security logs show one officer responding. Each year, the signature is different. This year, it's mine. I managed the graveyard shift at Coldstone Storage, a low-rise granite block that used to be an armory before it was gutted and filled with climate-controlled units. 6 floors, no windows, 1 elevator. The only warmth came from the coffee machine in the lobby and the faint heat of the CCTV monitors. My job was simple: sit behind the desk, watch the feeds, and make sure the motion sensors didn't cry wolf. Most nights the place was quieter than a tomb, which was ironic given the rumors that the lower levels used to be one. This night a storm rolled in fast, black clouds swallowing the moon, rain like pellets on the roof. At 11:03 p.m., the power flickered once, then steadied. The monitors rebooted in sequence, all cameras coming back online except one. B2 Corridor 3. The screen stayed black. I logged the anomaly, sipped burnt coffee, and figured the bulb had finally died. Then the black feed twitched and showed a single frozen frame, a hallway I didn't recognize. I leaned closer. The corridor on the screen was long, concrete, lit by bare bulbs that cast sickly yellow pools. At the far end stood a woman in a red coat, back to the camera, arms at her sides. The timestamp read 11 hours, 3 minutes 47 seconds, but the seconds weren't moving. I checked the other feeds, normal. I checked the floor plan. B2 was storage lockers, not corridors. I rubbed my eyes. The frame didn't blink. At 11:12, the frozen image changed. The woman had turned halfway, enough to show her profile, pale skin, black hair plastered to her cheek, lips moving soundlessly. I rewound the DVR. The footage refused to scrub. It was as if the camera had taken a photograph and refused to admit any time had passed since. I reached for the intercom to call maintenance, then stopped. The woman's lips synced with a word I could almost read. Help. I grabbed my flashlight and took the elevator to B2. The doors opened on the familiar storage floor, gray walls, numbered lockers, fluorescent hum. Corridor 3 was a short dead-end line with padlocked doors. No woman, no red coat. I checked the camera dome overhead. The LED was dark. I tapped it. Nothing. Back at the desk, the monitor now showed the same corridor, but the woman had moved closer, arms reaching forward as if pressing against glass. Timestamp still 11 hours, 3 minutes 47 seconds. The elevator dinged behind me. I turned. The floor indicator showed B3, a level that didn't exist on any blueprint. The door slid open to reveal the exact corridor from the screen. Same bulbs, same pools of yellow, same woman now facing me. She was 20 feet away, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. I stepped back. The elevator door shut. The indicator returned to 1. I ran to the stairwell. Concrete steps spiraled down past B2, past B1, then kept going. B3, B4, B5, each floor colder, each landing darker. At B6, the steps ended at a steel door marked authorized personnel only. The door was warm to the touch. I pushed. It opened onto the corridor again, longer now, woman closer, 10 feet. Behind me, the door locked with a hydraulic hiss. She wore my coat. Same red fabric, same tear on the left sleeve I'd meant to sew. Her breath clouded in the air. Mine didn't. She raised a hand, finger pointing past me. I turned. A second corridor branched left, mirrors on both walls reflecting me infinitely. In every reflection, I stood beside her, wearing her coat, mouth open in the same silent scream. I looked back. She was gone. Only the coat lay on the floor, frost already forming on the fabric. I ran. Corridors folded in on themselves, bulbs popping overhead like flashbulbs. At some point, I burst through a door and stumbled into the lobby. The clock read 11:03 p.m. Exactly. The CCTV showed B2 Corridor 3 empty. I checked my phone. 11 missed calls from my own number, all logged at 11:03. I rewound the DVR. From 11:03 to 11:47, the feed looped the same 15-second clip. Me entering B2, vanishing, reappearing. At 11:47, the clip ended with me walking out of frame toward the elevator. But I hadn't left the lobby since 11:03. I quit that morning. The day manager shrugged. Turnover was high. A week later, the building was condemned after engineers found structural damage beneath B1. No basement levels existed on any blueprint. Last month, I received a package, no return address, postmarked the day I quit. Inside was a single Polaroid. The corridor. The woman in the red coat. She has my face now. Timestamp, 11 hours, 3 minutes, 47 seconds. I worked the midnight shift at the Meridian Mall parking garage, the sub-basement level, P4, the one nobody uses because the ceiling leaks and the lights strobe like a dying heartbeat. My title was security, But the job was babysitting a concrete tomb full of forgotten sedans and the faint smell of antifreeze. Every hour I walked the spiral ramp, flashlight swinging, just to keep the cameras from timing out. Most nights the only sound was the click of my boots and the soft drip of water through cracks in the roof. Tonight the rain turned to sleet, then to snow, then to something that hit the concrete with the weight of coins. At 12:17 a.m., the intercom crackled, front gate reporting a lone driver asking to park. Policy said I had to wave them through. A silver SUV rolled down the ramp, headlights fogged, wipers smearing slush across the windshield. The driver didn't look at me, just a silhouette, hood up, face in shadow. I stepped aside, and the SUV coasted into P4, tires whispering over ice, and parked in the far corner beneath the busted sodium lamp. The engine died. No one got out. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. The car sat there, windows fogging from the inside as if dozens of breaths were fogging the glass. I approached, flashlight raised. The driver's seat was empty. The back seat was empty. The frost on the inside of the windshield had been scraped away in streaks, 5-finger-wide lines that spelled nothing I could read. I backed off, radioing the front gate. Dead air. The intercom was down. I was alone with a car that had driven itself. I started my patrol, trying to ignore the cold that seemed sharper tonight, like teeth. Halfway up the spiral, I heard the SUV start again, engine turning over once, twice, then catching with a wet cough. I spun, flashlight beams slicing through the dark. The SUV hadn't moved, but the exhaust now poured white smoke that pooled on the ceiling like low cloud. The sound stopped. Silence! Then, from the passenger side, a door opened and closed, though no wind moved and no feet appeared on the ground. I ran the ramp, boots skidding on black ice. By the time I reached the SUV, the snow had thickened, fat flakes swirling in the headlight beams. Fresh footprints led away from the driver's door, bare, small, already filling with slush. They walked in a perfect line toward the elevator shaft that had been boarded since the mall closed. I followed, hard hammering, until the prints stopped at the elevator doors. The boards were still in place, screws rusted solid, but the footprints ended at the seam as if someone had stepped straight through steel. Behind me, the SUV revved again. I turned just in time to see it roll forward. No driver, no passenger, headlights now a sickly yellow. It crept toward me at walking speed, tires crunching ice. I sprinted for the stairwell, shoulder checking the door. It opened onto a stairwell colder than the garage itself, lit by a single red exit bulb. I climbed 2 flights, burst into P3, and stopped. The same silver SUV idled in the same corner, exhaust steaming, snow already dusting the hood. The footprints were gone. I ran again, up to P2, P1, until the ramp spat me out at street level. Snow fell in sheets, but the mall lot was empty, gates locked. No SUV, no tire tracks, only my own footprints leading back inside. I checked my watch, 12:17 a.m., the exact minute the SUV had first appeared. I had been running for 20 minutes, yet no time had passed. I called a cab. While I waited, I stared at the garage entrance. Headlights flared inside, silver, low, crawling. The cab pulled up. I climbed in, didn't look back. As we drove away, I glanced at the side mirror. The SUV rolled out of the garage, slow, deliberate, following us for 3 blocks before vanishing into the storm. I quit the next morning. The manager shrugged, said turnover was high in winter. 2 weeks later, I read a brief in the local paper. Body found frozen in abandoned SUV, P4 Meridian garage. Identity unknown. The photo showed a silver SUV, windshield scraped clean in 5-finger-wide streaks. The body was never identified. The mall demolished P4 last spring. They poured concrete over the ramp, but on snowy nights I still hear tires whispering up the spiral, looking for a way out. For 2 years I drove the overnight shuttle for Harbor Freight, 6 stops between the airport and the cargo docks. back and forth from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. The route was simple. Pick up whatever the airlines dumped after dark, drop pallets at the pier, repeat. Tonight a storm had grounded every flight except one, an unmarked cargo jet that had landed at 1:12 a.m. Tower cleared me for gate 47, said they'd unload fast, told me to wait inside the van. I sat with the engine idling, wipers slapping sleet off the windshield, radio spitting static. At 1:27 a.m., the roller door clanged up. A single pallet rolled out, shrink-wrapped in black plastic, no labels except a red stencil. Keep frozen, do not X-ray. Two handlers in reflective coats pushed it toward the van without a word. Their breath didn't fog. The night was cold, but not that cold. The pallet slid inside with a wet thud, heavier than anything I'd hauled before. I asked for paperwork. They shook their heads, turned, and walked back into the gate, door slamming behind them. The runway lights dimmed, as if someone had dialed down the voltage. I pulled away. The pallet sat in the rearview mirror, black plastic twitching whenever the van hit a pothole. Sleet hissed against the roof. At 1:44 a.m., the plastic tore, slow, deliberate, like fingernails peeling tape. I glanced back. A pale hand, child-sized, pressed against the clear wrap, leaving 5 perfect smudges. I hit the brakes. The hand vanished. Plastic hung in strips, fluttering in the heater's draft. Inside was a small steel crate, lid padlocked, frost blooming across the metal. I radioed dispatch. Static! I tried my phone, no signal, only the GPS showing me still on the runway, icon stuck in the same spot. I drove. The highway should have appeared after 3 miles, but the road stayed straight, runway lights on either side stretching into fog. I checked the odometer, 0 miles logged. The fuel gauge dropped from half to empty in 30 seconds. I pulled over. The pallet was gone. Instead, the crate sat upright in the aisle, lid cracked open, hinges black with frost. Inside, a single child sneaker, white with a red lightning bolt, still damp as if just removed. I slammed the lid, padlock still intact but now warm to the touch. Headlights flared behind me. The same unmarked jet idled on the highway shoulder, engines whispering. The cargo ramp lowered. 2 handlers stepped out, same reflective coats, same empty faces. They walked to the van, lifted the crate, and carried it back to the jet as though I were invisible. I followed, shouting, but my voice came out muffled, swallowed by the storm. The ramp closed. The jet taxied, turned, accelerated down the highway that had become a runway again. It lifted off, wheels folding, disappearing into the low cloud ceiling. I stood in the sleet, van keys in hand, miles from anywhere. I walked. The road narrowed, narrowed, narrowed until it was a strip of tarmac, barely wider than my shoulders, bordered by runway lights that blinked red and white like a heartbeat. Behind me, footprints filled with water and froze into glass. Ahead, a lone gate appeared, chain link, padlocked, sign swinging in the wind. End of runway, it turned back. I touched the sign. It was warm. The padlock clicked open by itself. Beyond the gate stretched the exact same runway, same lights, same jet idling. Same pallet waited on the ramp, same black plastic, same red stencil. I stepped forward. The jet's engines whined. I turned to run, but the gate had vanished. Only the strip remained, looping back on itself like a Mobius strip of asphalt and sodium glare. I climbed into the van. The pallet was back, crate sealed, frost thicker. The dashboard clock reset to 1:12 a.m. I drove. Every lap ended at the gate. Every gate opened to another lap. At 6 a.m., the radio crackled alive, shift complete, return to base. I followed the voice. The runway dissolved into the harbor pier. Dock workers unloaded 6 identical crates. They never looked at me. I signed the manifest with shaking fingers. The clipboard showed today's date, but the year was 1998. I quit the next morning. The supervisor said the route had been discontinued since last winter. No record of Gate 47, no unmarked jets on the log. But every stormy night, I still hear jet engines overhead following a shuttle van that isn't there. And sometimes at 1:27 a.m., I find a child's white sneaker on my porch, sole warm, laces frozen stiff. I drove the county morgue transport van, white Ford Econoline, reinforced suspension, freezer unit humming in the back like a sick refrigerator. My shift started at 11 p.m. sharp. Collect unclaimed bodies from hospitals, deliver to the county facility, then sit idle until the next call. Most nights the cargo was quiet. Tonight the rain was sideways, wipers barely keeping up, and the scanner crackled with static every time lightning touched the hills. At 12:09 a.m., the dispatcher's voice cut through. Pick up at St. Agnes, female, DOA, no ID. Address, Rural Route 9, mile marker 47. I frowned. St. Agnes was a small clinic 20 miles west. They never called for transport themselves. But the storm had knocked out half the county lines, so anything was possible. I punched the address into the GPS and rolled. Route 9 was a 2-lane blacktop that ribboned through pine forest. No streetlights, no cell signal. The rain turned to sleet, then to something heavier, ice pellets that pinged off the windshield like ball bearings. At mile marker 46, the GPS said, arrival in 0.2 miles, but the road ahead was empty except for a single red flare burning in the middle of the pavement. I slowed. The flare hissed, casting crimson shadows across the wet asphalt. Beside it, a gurney waited, chrome frame, black body bag strapped tight. No ambulance, no staff, no footprints in the slush. I got out, coat flapping. The bag was cold, heavier than normal, zipper sealed with a plastic tag. Jane Doe 3rd December 2023, do not open. I wheeled it to the van, muscles burning against the weight. The zipper bulged slightly, as if something inside had shifted during the lift. I told myself it was rigor mortis settling. I slammed the doors, locked them, and pulled away. The freezer unit hummed louder, struggling against the storm. At 12:34 a.m., the first noise came, soft, rhythmic, like knuckles tapping metal. I turned the radio up. The tapping stopped. At 12:47, it returned, faster. I glanced in the rear view. The bag sat motionless under the dim dome light, but the plastic tag now hung loose, zipper teeth exposed like a grin. I reached the county facility at 1:05 a.m. The gates were locked, lights off. I called dispatch, no answer. I tried the facility landline, dead line. The storm had taken everything offline. I sat in the cab, engine idling, heat on full, watching the bag in the mirror. The zipper moved, slow, deliberate, tooth by tooth. I grabbed the handle, yanked it down. Inside was a woman's body, pale, wet hair plastered to her face. Her eyes snapped open, milky, unfocused. She sat up, neck cracking, and turned her head toward me. I stumbled backward, slipped on ice, hit the pavement hard. The van doors slammed shut by themselves. The engine revved, tires spinning, van lurching forward. I chased it, slipping, shouting. It fishtailed once, then straightened, disappearing into the storm. I stood alone on the apron, breath steaming, heart jackhammering. I walked for an hour before a snowplow found me. The driver said Route 9 had been closed since 11 p.m. due to ice. No vehicles had passed mile marker 47 all night. I filed a report anyway. The county had no record of a pickup call from St. Agnes. No Jane Doe logged in the system. The van was found 3 days later, abandoned in a ditch 20 miles north, doors wide open, freezer off. The body bag was inside, zipped tight, empty except for a single red flare, still burning in the dark. I worked the overnight grill at Dot's Diner, chrome stools, neon jukebox, coffee that could strip paint. The place sat on the edge of the interstate, last light for 50 miles. Most nights, the only company was the hum of the freezer and the occasional long-haul driver nodding off over hash browns. Tonight, the storm had turned the parking lot into a skating rink, sleet pinging the windows like buckshot. At 2:12 a.m., the power cut, lights dying mid-flash, jukebox wheezing to silence. The emergency generator kicked in after 30 seconds, bathing the kitchen in a sickly green glow. The freezer alarm beeped, door ajar. I ignored it. The latch stuck sometimes. Then the beeping turned into a slow, rhythmic thump, like something inside kicking to a heartbeat. I killed the alarm, grabbed the flashlight, and yanked the freezer handle. The walk-in was dark, colder than usual, frost glittering on every surface. A single tray of ground beef sat in the center, untouched, but the plastic wrap had been peeled back in perfect circles, as if someone had scooped handfuls and left the rest. Footprints led deeper, bare, small, already melting into the steel floor. I stepped inside. The door swung shut behind me, latch clicking like a lock. The overhead bulb flickered and steadied on a face pressed against the inner wall of glass. Mine, but wrong, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. I backed up. My reflection didn't move. Instead, it raised a hand and placed it flat against the glass. The frost beneath its palm spelled a word in reverse. Cold. The temperature dropped so fast my breath crystallized midair. I hammered on the door. No handle on the inside. The metal walls began to sweat, ice forming in veins across the steel. I turned to the reflection again. It was gone. In its place stood a child in a hospital gown, skin blue-white, hair stiff with frost. She pointed to the ground. The footprints now formed a circle, closing around me. The freezer compressor kicked into overdrive, a low drone that vibrated my teeth. I yanked the emergency release, snapped off in my hand. I kicked the door. It dented but held. The child stepped closer, each footfall cracking the floor like thin ice. She opened her mouth. No sound came, only a plume of frost that wrapped around my face, burning the inside of my nose. I tasted iron. My flashlight died. Darkness swallowed the bulb, but the green glow from the diner leaked under the door, casting long shadows that moved even when I didn't. Somewhere outside, the jukebox sputtered back to life. A lullaby played, slow, off-key, the same one my mother used to hum while defrosting the fridge. The child's eyes filled with tears that froze halfway down her cheeks. She reached out, fingers brushing my sleeve. Where her skin touched, ice bloomed instantly, locking the fabric to my arm. I jerked away. The sleeve tore, leaving a patch of frost on my skin that ached like a burn. The compressor coughed, then whined, then stopped. Silence! Absolute. I could hear my pulse in my ears, loud as a drum. The door handle turned from the outside. I shoved against it. It opened on the kitchen, steamy and golden with generator light. The cook, my coworker, stood there, spatula raised. I was knocking for 5 minutes, she said. I glanced back, empty freezer, frost melting into puddles. No footprints, no child. Only the word cold, still etched in the glass, already fading. I checked the time, 2:12 a.m. exactly. The power had never cut. The freezer alarm showed door closed, temperature normal. I walked outside to clear my head. Snow had stopped. The parking lot was empty except for a single set of small, bare footprints leading from the freezer door to the edge of the interstate and vanishing beneath the wheels of a northbound semi. I ran the overnight board at WKNO, a tiny FM station wedged between pawn shops and boarded up churches on the south side. The building was a converted movie theater from the 40s, Art Deco facade cracked with salt rock, lobby smelling of popcorn, ghosts, and mildew. From 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. the station aired syndicated jazz and public service announcements. My job was to sit in the glass booth, watch the meters, and hit the legal ID every hour. Most nights I read scripts, drank vending machine coffee, and tried not to fall asleep to the hum of vacuum tubes. Tonight, the storm arrived early, rain lashing the windows, power flickering like a dying strobe. At 12:03 a.m., the automation crashed. The jazz loop stuttered, reversed, then cut to dead air. I cursed, reached for the emergency cart, and found a reel-to-reel labeled, "Storm mode, do not play before 2 a.m." No date, no signature, just brittle masking tape and a grease pencil scrawl. I threaded it, hit play. A woman's voice spilled from the monitors, soft, Midwestern, recorded on tape so old the hiss sounded like surf. "Good evening, night caller. You're listening to WKNO, the only station that answers back. Our request line is open. Dial the number you see in your head." I glanced at the desk phone. The display showed line 1 incoming. I hadn't given the number on air in months. The reel kept rolling. "First caller, you're on." The phone rang. I stared at it. It rang again. I picked up. Silence, then breathing, slow and wet, as if through a damp cloth. A child's voice whispered, "I'm cold." The line clicked dead. The tape continued. "Second caller, you're on." The phone rang a second time. I let it ring. The booth lights dimmed. The reel slowed, dragging the woman's voice into a growl. I answered. This time the caller spoke clearly. "Turn around." I spun in the chair. The booth glass reflected the empty studio, but in the reflection, the on-air light glowed red above a second chair, occupied by a figure in a rain-soaked coat, head bowed, hair dripping onto the console. I turned back. Empty chair. I turned again. Figure still there, closer now, hand reaching for the fader. I killed the feed. The reel kept spinning. The woman's voice returned, normal speed. "Third caller, you're on." The phone rang a third time. I yanked the cord from the wall. The reel didn't stop. The booth door, the only way in, locked with a soft click. The overhead fluorescence died, leaving only the glow of the VU meters pulsing like a heartbeat. The tape continued. "Fourth caller, you're on." No phone this time, just my own voice coming from the monitor, live, delayed by half a second. I watched myself on the studio camera feed, mouth moving. "Fifth caller, you're on." But I wasn't speaking. The figure behind me in the reflection lifted its head. My face, paler, eyes wide, lips blue, stared back from the glass. It mouthed, "Sixth caller, you're on." The reel slowed to a crawl. The woman's voice deepened, stretched, became static. The studio temperature plummeted. My breath fogged the glass. The reflection reached forward and pressed the on-air button. Red light blazed. I lunged for the fader, but my hand passed through the board like mist. The reflection stayed solid. The tape snapped. "Silence!" Lights returned. The booth door unlocked. I stumbled out, heart racing. The studio was empty, reel still spinning, tape unspooled across the floor in a perfect circle. The phone sat on the desk, receiver off the hook, dial tone humming. I checked the clock, 2:47 a.m. Exactly. I rewound the reel to the beginning. The label had changed. Now it read, "Storm mode played at 2:47 a.m. Thank you for calling." I burned the tape, shredded the label, and locked the booth. I handed in my resignation at dawn. The station manager said WKNO had never owned a reel-to-reel labeled Storm mode. The booth log showed dead air from 12:03 to 2:47. But every stormy night since, listeners report a woman's voice between songs, listing callers who never phoned. Last week, a listener mailed a cassette, recorded at 2:47 a.m., containing my own voice answering calls I never took. The final track is 30 seconds of silence, followed by a child whispering, "Seventh caller, you're on." I don't listen to the radio anymore. But at 2:47 a.m., my phone still rings once. I never answer. I worked the graveyard shift at the county archive, a brutalist cube buried under 3 stories of government offices that smelled of dust and forgotten ambition. After 11 p.m., the elevators shut down, the lights dimmed to 40%, and the only sound was the hiss of climate control cycling every 12 minutes. My job was simple: patrol the vaults, log any anomalies, and make sure the motion sensors didn't mistake a rat for a burglar. Most nights I walked the aisles with a flashlight and a thermos of coffee thick enough to float a coin. Tonight the storm rolled in early. Rain turned to hail, then to something that rattled the skylights like birdshot. At 12:17 a.m., the motion sensor in Vault C triggered. I checked the monitor, empty aisle, shelves of sealed boxes labeled 1978 to 1983 confidential. The camera froze on a single frame. A box pulled halfway out, lid ajar, papers spilling like pale tongues. I logged it, grabbed my keys, and took the stairs down. Vault C was colder than usual, the air metallic against my teeth. I found the box exactly as the camera showed, except the papers on the floor weren't records. They were photographs of me, taken from the Vault security feed. Me at 12:03, 12:07, 12:11, each image grainier, as if the camera was losing resolution the closer it got to the present. The last photo was time-stamped 12:17, showing me standing where I now stood, staring at the photo of me staring at the photo. I backed away. The box slid back into the shelf by itself, lid closing with a soft click. The overhead light flickered and steadied on a new aisle, Vault D, an area that didn't exist on any floor plan. I walked toward it, boots crunching on frost that hadn't been there moments ago. The aisle ended at a steel door marked "Authorized Access, only a level 4. The keypad glowed red. I didn't have clearance beyond level 2. The keypad beeped once, then accepted a 6-digit code I hadn't entered. The door side open on a single room lit by a single bulb. Inside was a desk, a rotary phone, and a wall of filing cabinets. On the desk sat a manila folder labeled Termination Employee 1147, my employee number. Inside, my ID photo stapled to a termination notice dated October 14, 1998, the day the archive opened, the day I was born. The rotary phone rang, sharp, mechanical. I picked up. A woman's voice, calm and official. Employee 1147, your shift ends at 12:47 a.m. Please report to sub-level 4 for processing. I dropped the receiver. The filing cabinets began to open, drawers sliding out one by one, each containing a single photograph. Me at age 5, standing outside the archive. Me at 15, walking past the building. Me at 25, applying for the job. The last drawer held a photo taken tonight, me standing in Vault C, holding the folder. Behind me in the photo, a figure in a gray uniform identical to mine, face blurred, hand on my shoulder. I turned. The figure was there, same height, same build, no features, only smooth skin where eyes and mouth should be. It tilted its head. The bulb above popped, showering sparks. Darkness. I ran. Corridors folded back on themselves, Vault C becoming Vault A, stairs spiraling up instead of down. I burst into the lobby. The clock read 12:47 a.m. exactly. The night guard, me, stood behind the desk, coffee thermos in hand, staring at the monitor. On the screen, I was still in Vault C, still holding the folder, still frozen in the photograph. I backed away. The lobby lights dimmed. The night guard, me, smiled without teeth. The PA system clicked on. Employee 1147, shift complete. Please proceed to sub-level 4. The elevator doors opened behind me. Inside was the same gray figure, hand extended. I stepped inside. Doors closed. Descent began, slow, mechanical, endless. The elevator indicator showed L1, L2, L3, L4, then kept going. L5, L6, L7, numbers I didn't know existed. At L12, the doors opened onto the same room, the desk, the phone, the filing cabinets. But now the folder on the desk was open. Inside was a single photograph. Me, standing in the elevator, face blurred, hand reaching toward the camera. The rotary phone rang again. I picked up. My own voice. Employee 1147, your shift begins at 12:17 a.m. Please report to Vault C. I looked at the clock. 12:17 a.m. The cycle reset. I still work the graveyard shift. Every night at 12:17, the motion sensor triggers. Every night, I walk the aisles. Every night, the folder waits. Every night, the elevator descends. The storm still rattles the skylights. Sometimes I hear my own footsteps echo twice, once off tile, once off something softer, like flesh. I worked the overnight dock at Sterling Logistics, a cavernous warehouse on the river's edge where trucks came and went like migrating whales. My shift ran 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., just me and the forklifts, moving pallets while the city slept. Tonight, a nor'easter had parked offshore, flinging rain sideways, so hard it drummed on the tin roof like machine gun fire. At 12:47 a.m., the last truck of the night pulled away, tail lights swallowed by fog. I killed the bay lights, locked the gates, and started the long sweep to make sure no driver had left behind a phone or a thermos. The loading floor was empty except for a single pallet of medical supplies, cardboard boxes stamped temperature sensitive, do not freeze. They weren't on my manifest. I figured someone had misdropped them and would swing back at dawn. I parked the pallet beside the freight elevator and headed for the break room. Halfway there, the elevator dinged. I stopped. Power had been cut to the lifts at midnight. The doors slid open anyway, revealing a shaft lit by one red bulb. Inside stood a gurney, chrome frame, black body bag strapped tight, frost blooming on the vinyl. No driver, no order, no tag. Just a card clipped to the rail. Destination, River Tunnel, 12:47 a.m. I radioed the night supervisor, dead channel. I tried my phone, no signal, swallowed by the storm. The gurney rolled forward on its own, wheels squeaking across the concrete until it bumped the edge of the elevator. I should have walked away. Instead, I pushed it inside, hit B2, and rode down. The lift rattled, slowed, stopped. The doors opened onto a tunnel I'd never seen, concrete walls sweating, air colder than the freezer trucks, single string of bulbs flickering overhead like dying fireflies. The gurney rolled again. I followed, boots crunching on broken glass and dried salt. 50 yards in, the tunnel widened into a loading bay carved straight into bedrock. A concrete ramp descended into black water that lapped at iron pilings. A rusted sign read, Sterling River Tunnel, decommissioned 1978. The gurney stopped at the water's edge. The body bag shifted, zipper teeth grinding. I took a step back. The zipper opened by itself, slow, deliberate. Inside lay a woman in a hospital gown, skin the color of candle wax, eyes closed. She looked peaceful until her chest rose. One breath, then another. Her eyes snapped open, milky, unfocused. She sat up, head tilting at an impossible angle, joints creaking. She opened her mouth. River water poured out, steady, endless, pooling around my boots. I ran. The tunnel narrowed, walls closing like a throat. Behind me the gurney clattered, wheels squealing as it gave chase. I burst into the elevator shaft, slammed the call button. Doors opened on the warehouse floor. I stumbled out, heart punching ribs, and hit the alarm. The gurney was gone. No water, no footprints, only the medical pallet where I'd left it. The clock read 12:47 a.m. Exactly. I'd been gone 6 minutes, but the storm outside had aged into a howl. I locked the bay, climbed to the office, and rewound the CCTV. The elevator never moved. The tunnel never appeared. But at 12:47, the freight elevator doors opened on their own. Inside stood the gurney, empty this time, straps undone, wheels spinning slowly. The body bag lay folded beside it, zipper teeth smiling. I quit the next morning. The day manager said the river tunnel had been sealed since 1978 after a flood washed 3 dock workers into the current. Their bodies were never recovered. But every storm season, around 12:47 a.m., the elevator doors open on B2. Security footage shows nothing, just the gurney rolling out, stopping at the water's edge, then rolling back in. Last week, a new hire texted me a photo, grainy CCTV still, 12:47 a.m. The gurney is in the elevator. A woman in a red coat stands behind it, hand on the rail, eyes fixed on the camera. She's wearing my uniform. The timestamp hasn't changed. I was the overnight pharmacist at Lock and Key, a 24-hour drugstore wedged between a shuttered laundromat and a pawn shop that never slept. My shift ran 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Me, the register, and the humming aisles of shampoo and laxatives. Most nights, the only sound was the fluorescent buzz and the soda machine coughing out ice. Tonight, the rain came sideways, drumming the metal awning like fingers on a coffin lid. At 12:33 a.m., the automatic door slid open, then closed, then opened again. No one crossed the threshold. I checked the security monitor. Front walk empty, rain sheeting off the awning. I chalked it up to wind and went back to counting oxycodone. At 12:47, the doors repeated the dance. Open, close, open. This time the security feed glitched, blurring into static for 3 full seconds. When the picture cleared, a woman stood at the counter. She wore a hospital gown, paper thin, soaked through. Her hair clung to her face in wet ropes. Her feet were bare and pale as candle wax. She didn't speak. She placed a prescription slip on the counter, edges curled, ink bleeding into the laminate. The slip read, morphine 100 milligrams stat patient, me, no doctor's signature, no date. Just the word me, scrawled in shaky capitals. I told her we couldn't fill without proper documentation. She tilted her head, eyes wide and unblinking. The slip slid toward me on its own, leaving a trail of water that smelled of antiseptic and lilies. I stepped back. The intercom crackled, my own voice, recorded years earlier during a training drill. Code Blue Pharmacy Overdose Protocol. I hadn't touched the intercom. Behind the woman, the shelves began to empty. Bottles rolled off the racks. Boxes slid. Blister packs rained like confetti. They poured into her open arms, stacking themselves into a loose pyramid at her feet. The security monitors showed the floor behind her, still dry, still stocked. The chaos existed only where I stood. I hit the panic button. Nothing. I ran for the back exit. The door handle was warm, pulsing like a vein. I pulled. It opened onto the same pharmacy, aisles reversed, labels backwards, the woman now at the prescription drop-off window. She raised a hand. Behind her, the security monitor showed me standing in the original pharmacy, mouth open, eyes wide. I was watching myself watch her. I slammed the door. It shut on the same room. The woman stepped forward, arms now full of medication. She opened her mouth. River water poured out, steady, endless, pooling around my shoes. I smelled formaldehyde, wintergreen, and something metallic. The lights died. Only the green exit sign glowed. The woman walked past me, barefoot, water sloshing with each step. She left wet footprints that spelled a single word across the tile. Refill. I followed. The aisle stretched longer than the store should allow, shelves repeating the same bottle over and over. Morphine 100 milligrams stat. At the end stood a pharmacy counter identical to mine, but older, glass cracked, register rusted shut. Behind it sat a man in a white coat, my face, 10 years older, eyes bloodshot, hands shaking as he counted pills. He looked up and mouthed, "You're late." I turned to run. The woman blocked the exit, arms now empty. She held out a bottle, childproof cap already off, label reading, patient, you a dosage. Final. I took it. The cap was warm. Inside, one pill, white as bone, dissolving into water the moment it touched air. The lights snapped back. I stood behind the counter, coat soaked, hands counting pills. The woman was gone. The floor was dry. The prescription slip lay on the counter, blank except for a single fingerprint in red ink. I looked at the clock, 12:47 a.m. The doors slid open. A man in a hospital gown walked in, barefoot, eyes wide. He placed a prescription slip on the counter. It read, morphine 100 milligrams stat patient, me. I looked up. My reflection in the security monitor showed a woman in a soaked hospital gown, hair clinging to her face, mouth open in a silent scream. The cycle reset. I reached for the bottle. The pill dissolved again. I no longer work nights. But every 12:47 a.m., the automatic doors still open and close, as if someone is stepping in and out of a pharmacy that never closes. I worked the graveyard shift on the M/V Calypso, the last car ferry still running the midnight loop between Harbor Point and Blackwater Island. The route was officially maintenance sailings for freight trucks, but the company kept one passenger deck open for insomniacs and night shift workers. My job was simple: take tickets, brew coffee, and make sure nobody fell overboard while the captain napped in the wheelhouse. Most nights the crossing took 47 minutes, exactly 47, down to the second, because the channel ran straight and the current was predictable. Tonight the storm had stalled offshore, turning the water into black glass and the air into sleep that stung like birdshot. I boarded at 2:30 a.m., last passenger, last car. The ferry was empty except for me, the helmsman, and a single 18-wheeler chained to the center lane. The truck had no markings, no plates, just a faded, keep refrigerated sticker peeling off the side. Its driver never left the cab. I caught a glimpse through the windshield, hood up, face in shadow, hands resting on the wheel like mannequins. The truck's reefer unit hummed louder than the engines, a low, constant drone that vibrated the soles of my boots. At 3 a.m., the captain rang the bell, 3 short, 1 long, the signal to cast off. We pushed away from the dock, sleet hissing against the hull. I made rounds, passenger lounge, snack bar, car deck, everything normal except the cold. The heaters were running, but my breath fogged the air like cigarette smoke. I blamed the reefer truck. I settled behind the snack bar with a mug of coffee that cooled faster than it should have, watching the clock tick toward 3:17 a.m., the exact minute the ferry always passed the old lighthouse, now automated and dark. At 3:12, the lights flickered once, then steadied. The PA crackled, my own voice, recorded months earlier during a safety drill. Passengers are reminded to remain seated during heavy weather. I hadn't touched the mic. I stood. The passenger lounge windows reflected the empty seats, but in the reflection, a woman sat in the last row, wet hair, hospital gown, eyes fixed on me. I spun. Empty seats. I looked back. Reflection still showed her, closer now, hands folded in her lap. I walked the car deck. The truck's reefer unit had stopped. Silence! The driver's door stood open, cab empty. Chains hung slack, tires still. I touched the trailer wall, ice cold, condensation forming handprints that vanished as soon as I pulled away. I backed off. From inside the trailer came a sound, soft, rhythmic, like knuckles tapping metal. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps. I retreated to the stairwell, heart-punching ribs. At 3:17, the ferry lurched. Not a wave, more like the hull had struck something soft and massive. The engines revved, then idled. The PA clicked again, my voice, slower, distorted. All ashore who's going ashore. I rushed to the wheelhouse. Captain's chair empty, radar dark, compass spinning. Through the windshield I saw the lighthouse, but it wasn't dark. It burned white hot, beam sweeping the deck like a searchlight. The beam fixed on me. I ran back to the passenger deck. The woman from the reflection stood at the railing, hospital gown plastered to her skin, water streaming off her sleeves. She didn't speak. She pointed to the water. I looked. The sea was glassy, black, but beneath the surface shapes moved. Dozens of pale figures, hands pressed against the hull, mouths open in silent screams. The woman turned to me. Her lips moved. You're late. The PA spoke again, my voice, calm, recorded. Final boarding call for 3:17 a.m. Ferry. Passengers who miss this sailing will remain. I backed toward the stairwell. The truck's trailer doors swung wide. Inside, rows of gurneys, each draped with a black body bag. One bag sat upright, unzipped, empty. The woman stepped forward, arms open, as if inviting me to lie down. I turned to run. The ferry lurched again. The car deck tilted. The truck rolled backward, chain snapping like guitar strings. It crashed through the railing and vanished into the water, taking the gurneys with it. No splash. They simply sank. I sprinted to the bow. The lighthouse beam swept across the deck and locked on the empty driver's seat of the truck. The beam narrowed, focused, and the seat began to smoke, fabric curling like burning paper. I smelled formaldehyde and seawater. The ferry engines revved one final time, then died. Silence. Absolute. I looked at the clock, 3:17 a.m., on the dot. The lighthouse beam winked out. The ferry drifted, engines silent, lights dying one by one until only the emergency red glow remained. I was alone on a black ocean, no land in sight. The woman stood beside me now, hand on my shoulder. Her fingers were ice. She whispered, "You're home." I woke at 6 a.m. on the passenger deck, coffee mug cold in my hand. The ferry docked at Harbor Point. The captain was at the wheel, whistling. The truck was gone. The manifest showed one passenger meeting. The lighthouse logbook recorded no activity after 2 a.m. I handed in my badge and walked away. 3 weeks later, a body washed up on Blackwater Island. Female, early 20s, hospital gown, cause of death listed as drowning. The coroner's photo showed my face. The date on the tow tag, October 14, 1998, the day the ferry first ran the midnight loop. I no longer work nights. But every 3:17 a.m., I hear the ferry horn across the harbor, low and mournful, calling for its last passenger.